Welcome back to the Inorganic Podcast. I'm Christian Hassold.
And I'm Ayelet Shipley, and we are talking about all things inorganic growth in agency and software.
That's right. From market trends to deals that are getting over the line, we're your go-to team, pulling back the curtain on everything from deal strategy to execution. Let's go.
I'm really excited today because we have Tom Shipley with us. And I'll let Tom share his background in deeper, but headline wise, Tom has been for the last 20 years launching, scaling, and acquiring and building businesses and acquisition platforms. His brands have sold over $2 billion through direct consumer marketing, Amazon, and retailers. And he's also acquired and sold over a dozen businesses. And after, that first bit in his career, he then raised $100 million to start Foundry Brands, an Amazon and e-commerce brand aggregator, and then went to say, what's the newest challenge I should do? And it was reimagine agency M&A, launched Agency Ventures Aggregator. And then Christian and I have spoken many times about the DealCon conference. Tom also launched, started, and continues to hold that twice a year. So with that, and knowing that Tom is an ultimate operator, acquirer, how did you kind of fall into the M&A side of business building?
So first of all, thank you for making it sound very, very easy. And I'm hesitant even sharing any of the details because it sounded like such an easy, fast track, incredible path. And I just don't want to add any complexity or share any of the pain. But the reality is, if anyone who's ever been in business knows that no matter what, there's going to be unforeseen circumstances, black swan events, different things are going to happen that create massive challenge in your business. For me, I decided that I was going to start a business in 1999, and I found a product niche in an industry niche that was untapped. And with this great idea, I raised $10,000 to start it. Fast forward a year and a half later, we're growing very fast. We're mailing out millions. Basically, it was an online store. We had great metrics to the business. We're mailing out also millions of catalogs because I believed in omni-channel marketing. We grew up to a dozen pages in the Sky Mall in-flight magazine. Life was good until the dot-com bust happens. Dot-com bust happens. Capital becomes very scarce. Slight recession hits. Conversion rate goes down. Average order goes down, which means that the metrics aren't working. We're losing money. We're shrinking. It was starting to shrink in size. And my CFO said, Tom, we're out of cash in 30 days. As an entrepreneur, I know how to squeeze things. And plus, I'm an optimist. So I knew we had 90 days of cash. But that meant we were really, really stressed and we had to find a solution. Opportunistically, a investment banker that I met who was based out of New York, who I met at a prior conference, which means just a lesson there is always be building your relationships and your Rolodex. But he called me up and he said, Tom, I have a great acquisition for you. And he starts with representing Boise Cascade. We're selling a $750 million division. And I'm thinking, why the hell are you talking to me? And he said, and of which we have a buyer for it. And they have a $15 million division, which is complementary to your business. You're the perfect buyer. Again, my first lesson that I learned here is what you really have to understand what the real opportunities are is when there is strong seller motivation. The economics of getting rid of a $15 million vision isn't what they're looking for. They're looking for a successful, larger transaction to find a home for this and the team and everything else. And this long-term legacy business. So fast forward 90 days later, we acquired this business. It changed everything in my business. And a year later, I exited. Now, fast forward 2 years afterwards, myself and a partner decided to take our blueprint on how I build iconic brands using direct response marketing. And we were living in Richmond, Virginia at the time, to the industry. Everyone said we'd fail because no one had done it before. This is 2005. We had this vision that we were going to build a $100 million beauty brand using direct response marketing. And we had such strong conviction on this. We went in financially, and at the end of the year, we had spent every dime. I had borrowed everything I could against the house credit cards. We even took loans out against our cars. And so, but we were out of cash at the end of the year, but we proved the model worked. It worked in radio, print, and online. So the model worked. We achieved 331,000 of revenue. And some of you are thinking about, well, why are we hearing about this right now? But wait a minute, I'll share with this. We had 331,000 in revenue, slight loss, but we were done out of cash. Now, the lesson I learned from my first business is when you run out of money, what do? You buy a business.
You get more money.
You gotta go to the bank and they laugh. And I went to banks, I went to lenders, I went to investors, and we were done. I couldn't find anything else. And when I learned is that from an acquisition, so again, we went to acquisition. We made an offer for a online business that had everything we needed, because the big thing about M&A is acquisitions can solve almost every business challenge. Our challenge was clearly cash flow, but it was just me and my partner in a little attic outside in Richmond, an office in Richmond. And so we needed everything. We needed fulfillment. We needed customer service. We needed accounting. We needed and we needed most of all, more internet marketing expertise and designers and developer. And we needed a tech stack, because back then there was no plug and play solution. And so suddenly we found this in Hoboken, New Jersey. It was a profitable $15 million business with $1.5 million of EBITDA. We had motivated sellers of a young couple who were 25 years old. We made them an offer that in the end, they couldn't resist. And we ended up buying this business, and it solved all our acquisition. Now, what did it mean for us? We had so many different challenges. It solved all our challenges. We put our little $331,000 brand on top of this $50 million business. Within 3 years, we did $100 million. We did $1 billion in revenue on that first skincare brand that we incubated by investing a little bit into formulation from a formulator. Okay. So again, that is the power of acquisitions. And after that, I realized that this accident happened to my first business, and then I just did it again, is not an accident. And again, my background is industrial engineering. So the question is, how can you turn this into a process? Now, it took me too many years to start doing this as a discipline. And that's what I've been all in for the last 5 years is I do not want to build business from scratch. It's like being dragged through asphalt and glass. I want to just be doing acquisition and focus on scaling.
You make, a comment, and you make a really compelling point here that's worth double clicking a little bit on. The first is long live Sky Mall magazine. I miss that magazine. When you're landing on planes, they make you, back in the old days, especially post 2001, they really made you put everything away and under the seat. And so there's this dead 15 to 20 minutes while you're waiting for the plane to land. And it was always great to have a Sky Mall magazine in front of you. There's always some knickknack that you didn't know you needed until you opened up Sky Mall and you're like, I absolutely need that. But back then, we didn't have the bandwidth on our phones to order. So you just rip out the page, take it home, and then get on the World Wide Web and order it. And then invariably, there'd be Sky Mall magazines with missing pages on most of the planes. So I miss it. But I think you said a couple of things there, but one kind of super important is most think about entrepreneurship as starting a business from scratch and going through what you say, the dragging yourself through asphalt and glass to kind of build everything from scratch. But in fact, there are, many, many, many thousands of businesses out there every single day that are available to be acquired that can get you 30 to 40% along the way in the journey that you want to undertake. So whatever it is that you want to do, there is in all likelihood a business that is available for acquisition that can get you to where you want to go. I think it's hard for people to grasp put their arms around the concept of like taking someone else's 30% of something, making it yours, and then making it a success, because usually there's some gotchas. So could you double click a little bit on the mental process of, instead of starting it exactly the way you want it to be, sort of designing your perfect partner and accepting your imperfect partner and making it work and making it more successful?
Well, let me start with just this attitude about opportunities. In the United States, we have over 1,000 businesses a day where the owners are retiring. 75% of them, 75% were going to go through processes and be unsuccessful at selling and inevitably just close their business down. Every single day. Now imagine the opportunities what's out there is, and therefore the opportunity is for you to talk to enough sellers in exactly what you're looking for on that. And most of the opportunities are there if you just have enough seller conversation. From deal economics, yes, I bought a business, my second business. We bought it. It was $1.5 million of EBITDA a year. We had no money, but because they were a growing business, they had $1 million of EBITDA. It wasn't that difficult for me to go out and find a lender. In this case, it was a mezzanine lender that would actually loan us the money to do the acquisition. And the ROI was massive from that, from bringing on the debt. And remember, it wasn't me signing a personal guarantee. I didn't have anything for a business because, again, they lent it not on a $31,000 business that lost a little bit of money. They lent it based on this acquisition we did. And the loan that we had was guaranteed by that business. So again, we need to rewire the way we think about getting deals done to understand the opportunities. Now, most businesses and business owners will hit a cap either because that's all they wanted, that's all they can aspire for. They can't think by that. They won't change the process and system and the way they operate. And they'll get stuck at $1 million in revenue, $5 million in revenue, 20 million in revenue. Somewhere most business owners will get stuck. And by going in there and having a different philosophy to this, there are great businesses that have amazing bones. And what is holding them back is either, I'm going to say, is the owner or the owners or the dynamics between two partners in a business. And that is where there's an opportunity to come in and find these great opportunities of businesses and then take your expertise and scale that. And if you have a business, you can choose to grow organically. And Kristen, you and Ayelet have spoken about this in the past. We are spending so much of our time and resources thinking and brainstorming, how can we continue to grow? And we're to grow by 20% this year, but then we have a bad year, 5%. But on average, if we look back and say, wow, we've grown 10% every year for the last 5 years on average. And look at, we've increased our enterprise value by 50%. Isn't that great? If you simply do one acquisition per year, that's 50% of your size, dedicate 5 to 7% of your resources just as a process to do acquisitions. You buy one business a year that's half your size for 5 years. You'll increase your enterprise value by 1,200%. It creates new strategic opportunities, exit opportunities, liquidity opportunities that you'll never realize with a 50% increase in value, especially when you compound and you factor in the inflation on that. Okay, so therefore, you don't have to do one a year. You don't have to do one that's half your size, but the opportunity is there, but just by thinking differently.
I think there's at least two things you've said here that we just need to thread the needle on. I'll pick one. Maybe I'll let you pick another. I think the first one is never assume that because you don't personally have the capital that you're not in a position to go do M&A. The lending possibilities for acquiring a profitable business, there are more than the private debt markets. They love these kinds of opportunities. So never assume just because you don't have the money in your own bank account to do M&A that you can't do it. If it's the right deal, you'll be able to find a lender to go get it. I think that's an important point to punctuate here. What do you see?
Yeah, and I think this is more of a question from me too. And I don't know why it's easier for me to grasp on the growth side, how you use M&A as a tool to solve your challenges, right? Your people, your product, your P&L, right? I mean, it's clear, and I don't think people take advantage of it in the same way. And it's really taking, more of a traditional and private equity way of thinking and bringing it down to the independents. But people are always a challenge for me. And I think it's from my therapist background that I think people are just stubborn and it's hard to get them to resolve their issues. You said okay, we can solve, different dynamics within partnerships. Can you double click on that? How would you use M&A as a tool to solve partner problems if the partner problem is existing within your current business?
I can't tell you how many partnerships that I've seen where this is the dialogue that goes every year is partners aren't getting along. And let's just face it, most partnerships will there's only a few partnerships where it goes amazing and then people do multiple business with each other. The majority of situations happen is that there is conflict early, conflict in the middle, different agendas, or just different lifestyle. One wants to keep on hammering it and the other partner and loves to work 60 hours a week, loves their business, pussy, and the other one wants to take the foot off the grass and enjoy life, or just basically put a little bit of part-time. Most partnerships agreement are not structured to handle that, where people think in advance of, well, and a partner who wants to take their foot off the gas said, hey, I always think at the very beginning, of course, I get half of everything, and whatever you want to do, you do, and you get your salary, and I get my salary, and we're equal partners, and that's just the relationship. I've seen that more common, and that's the issue. And over time, it grades and creates real friction. In that situation, I see a lot of partners saying to their partner is, I'll tell you what, I want to buy you out, and here's what I'll buy you out for. And the partner will say, that's too little. Well, then come up with a deal structure that works for you. And then they might come up with an outrageous thing. And then I've seen some partners say, I'll tell you what, here's the offer to buy your business out. And if you don't want that, here it is. And then person says that's too much money. Then the other partner come back and say, I'll tell you what, then pay me that much money. And then the partner says, I will never pay that much for the business. Again, they wouldn't take it themselves, but they won't pay it. They also won't do the work to go out, get outside lending and structure to do that. And I've seen so many businesses that I've seen businesses fold because they couldn't resolve this issue. Okay. So partnership dynamics, we can have a whole session, which would be a great one just on partnerships, the way to partnership agreements and structures, but it's a different subject. Now, a lot of times is if you can't resolve with your partner, if you bring in an outside partner to replace them, now suddenly you have a third party negotiating deal economics where I'm not selling my business to you, but I'm selling it to them. I'm selling my share of the business to them. It's the same thing as us sell the business. I get to go to my next chapter. So I've seen M&A be able to solve those businesses on a more often basis. And there's for the person coming in, that's real opportunity also to do that. And then there's ways of negotiating it through a third party. So there's more realistic expectation about what real valuation is.
Sometimes it actually is beneficial for an outside third party to take an interest in the business as you bring in sort of a new fresh blood in the room. One, to sort of loosen the dynamic between the partners that may be conflicted, because it's kind of like family. You're sort of just like, the BATNA is, as long as they lose, I'm happy. And so you kind of need it. So someone being new to the mix sometimes helps that. It also gives like an outside perspective on value, because what someone else is willing to pay sometimes helps inform that. So I see that as a real kind of a helpful problem solver. I think what's underappreciated is we all have in our minds this perfect image of who our partner should be, what our life should be like. And as entrepreneurs, we form a perfect idea of what our business should look like. And that sometimes gets in our own way, and we're unwilling to compromise with ourselves and thereby our partners in what the business should look like. And eventually the business just hits a point where it can't get to its next chapter without a new idea, a new brain, a new vision for the business. And I think the point you were making earlier, Tom, is that every day 1,000 businesses come on the market, and part of them is succession planning, lack of succession planning. There's no one that wants to take over the business. Part of it is the founder, the owner of the business is taken as far as they can taken it, and they want someone else to go have the energy to, like, it's 9 or 10 years of fighting their way to get to 3 million in revenue. They just don't want to do it anymore. And a third category is partners just get completely misaligned. They spend more time fighting about what to do with the business than actually running the business and driving in the ground. That's an opportunity for someone who's willing to be the successor of the business and can come up with an exciting structure. That's an opportunity for someone who's willing to work between founders that are misaligned and help them kind of get out of the whatever state they're currently in.
Let's talk about mergers for a second, okay? There's a deal that's happening right now where it's two businesses. They have $1 million in EBITDA. One of the partners and one of the agency is looking to change something in his life. They haven't been able to agree from the two partners with being able to find the right price and the right structure to the deal for the last 2 years. Now, suddenly a merger opportunity happens, and it's also a level of trust. The partner who wants to leave trusts the guys that are coming in. They have a great, growing, successful business. Together, they get the ninth wonder of the world of valuation multiple expansion by putting the two $1 million businesses together. So they're worth more. It also gives the partner who wants to leave more confidence because there's larger EBITDA in his seller payments because it's going to be cash and seller payments. So he wins. Now suddenly, because there's a merger, there's an opportunity to buy one of the partners out over time and change his role and structure and really create everything and the operating agreement from new because it's a stronger, better opportunity and for him to see his exit and actually realize the full sale of all the shares over time. So again, that's the power of even not an acquisition, but this is a pure merger.
So let's say you have 50-50 owners in a business, and one of the owners does a lot of the work, but they're not the business person per se.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other founder wants to eventually sell. They want to grow their current revenue and EBITDA, but the partner that does the most amount of work just really isn't on board with it.
I typically don't see that more often. I see one partner who's all in, who wants to grow, and just be dedicated all in and keep on scaling and looking more ways. And they're willing to do the work and they have the vision. And the other partner is good and comfortable. And therefore they just want to do the status quo. And so that's what I'm used to. That's what I'm used to seeing. And therefore, and it doesn't matter. The problem with the partnership is that you need two yeses to move forward into a new direction. And versus one partner can keep the business back, opportunities, growth, acquisitions, whatever you want, or exits. And basically it just takes one no to do that. And that's where I see most business partners fall through. So what I'm thinking about is very simply is motivation. And that's where it has to get down to is that if the operator in that situation, there's nothing going to move them. And the real question is the business person, are they just ideas? Or are they working hard and are they adding real value to the business? If they're adding strong value to the business, and a lot of times they're the one generating the business and the revenue piece, and the business can't survive without them, they might have a leg up because you can always replace an operator, either through hiring or through an acquisition. But for the business person growing and scaling and that's great at business development and has an eye for marketing, that's the real magic in a bottle. And therefore, sometimes it takes a crisis for the person who's in the day-to-day job, but eventually it wears thin where there has to be a solution there to solve it. Or otherwise the one partner says, I'm just going to leave and start my own business. I'm going to buy a new business. And at a certain point, I've seen people grind to a halt. And so let me just change the perspective on this for a second. And this is something that I talk to both owners, and sometimes you have to bring in a mediator to address this, is you see the relationship, even though they start off as good friends, and typically it grinds and it gets worse every year. The conflict, this is their main thing, can't help but get worse every year. And then inevitably is the conversation is, imagine if you're doing the same, having the same discussions, having the same conflict, but it goes on for another year. But obviously what happened over the last 2 years have gotten better or worse? It's gotten worse. Imagine it getting worse over the next year. Now let's fast forward 2 years. Let's fast forward 3 years. Now imagine feeling that same way. How does it make you feel 5 years? Now let's bring it forth 10 years. How are you both going to feel the fact that you are in this grind, in this deadlock for the next decade of your life, not fulfilling both your dreams and wishes because you're in this deadlock and it's getting worse? How are you going to feel? And just trying to change the perspective to get people to want to make a decision, to say we need to find a solution. And then I'm going to go back to acquisitions is, why don't we bring in and do a merger? Let's do a larger agency and let's change the dynamics that you can have the quality of life. It creates liquidity for both of us, but I can live what I want to do as far as building this bigger vision. And you can continue running the division and you own that. You'll run the division and I get to do what I want to do. And let's do this through a merger. Let's do this through an acquisition. Sometimes you have to bring an outside person in to help mediate those challenges. What are your thoughts?
I think that's the important part because what you're describing this is very nuanced. What you're describing is when partners become misaligned and the tension is around the psychology of who is winning. Who is winning?
Mm-hmm.
And also that one of the partners, usually the disaffected partner, also is like, I want the future value of this business, even though I don't want to be here anymore. I think this business is worth 10 million and therefore I want 5 million for my half, even though today the business is worth, at best maybe 1.5 million. So usually that's what I've observed are the tensions. You bring in another partner who might say, okay, well, let's, you kind of have to loosen up sort of that tension. And if you have the right third party come to the room, they can find a way to sort of unlock and bridge the gap between some of the distances.
Bridge the gap, that's where it's great, where you come up with a value to sell X% of the shares. They roll over the rest of the shares into the upside. So they'll get sometime in the future the upside of the business, but they basically tick out, and then you can change the control, the voting rights. Again, to me, it's a lot of times is when partners get deadlocked, a business, especially 2025, 2026, 2026, every business needs to think about radical transformation. It could be radical evolution, but if you're doing the same thing in your business 3 years from now and 5 years from now that you're doing now, most businesses will not be in businesses after attitude. And if two partners are deadlocked, they're putting their legacy, they're putting their family's legacy, they're putting their financial future of themselves and their kids at risk and in jeopardy. And having a third party that you trust coming in, helping arbitrate this is what's necessary.
I think we're getting in the weeds and the tactics, but I think we want to bring this back to where we started in the podcast, which is the concept that if you have a choice between starting a business completely from scratch, and from day one, it's like, I have an idea. Now I need to go get customers. Now I need to go, build a team. Again, the asphalt and the glass approach, if you will, versus the, if you're good enough, you're smart enough, you're capable enough to start a business from scratch, you're probably smart enough and capable enough to go identify an opportunity to acquire something. And the role that you're actually playing now is figuring out how to broker a deal where you can get 30% of what you're looking for, 40% of what you're looking for on day one. You just have to have the skills to sort of unpry that business from whoever has that business and is ready for succession. It could be back to the person who's sort of like, I just didn't have a succession plan. Please buy the business from me. What you'll always find is you're never actually negotiating with that one person. You're negotiating with the wife, the partner, the daughter, somebody who's like, yeah, but actually, this could have been mine. There's always someone. And so it's kind of thinking through, what are the real negotiating dynamics? What are the things that you're really, who are the people that you're really negotiating with and taking something apart? And the role that you're playing is really as a mediator and a buyer at the same time.
You're 100% correct. And the only thing I'll disagree with you is it 30 or 40%, or is it 50 or 60% there? If you're buying an existing profitable business in the niche that you want to do that has an active team, they're good at what they do, so that you bought in the right buy box, if you do it correctly, you're a lot further, and it's compared to zero, meaning you have 0% there. And everything is at risk. Your first hire is at risk. Your second hire, you are back. So let me just talk for a second about the valley of despair. The people that I have the most heartbreak for are the entrepreneurs that have been running for the last 20 years and they went out of businesses that generate between 1 to 2 million of EBITDA. And let's just say they have a partner with it. So typically what I've seen is great quality of living. They're spending most everything, and they have their 401ks they're putting on. But after 10 or 15 years, or maybe 20, they don't have enough where they're at the top of the summit. They can walk away from the business and don't need any income. And when they sell, they're going to sell for 3 to 5 times their EBITDA. They may or may not get the earnout, because let's face it, 80% of earnouts never happen. But let's just say they do. Is they got 5 years of income from that business going forward, but what's going to happen after that? Typically, it's not enough top of the summit moment where I'm done. So what do? But let's just say they sell now, and they leave the company after a year or 2 years. They're done with their whatever earnout is, or whether they can stay or not. But now they need to start a business again. They have a choice. They've already built a successful business to $5-10 million, and they had $1 to $2 million of EBITDA. Great. So they've already done that. They can go out there and find somebody business to buy. they're a successful business person. They can get down on the business. It can be exactly with the criteria of what they're looking to do next. And basically, day one, they're operating a successful business, cash flowing it. They're not pumping their own money into a startup where everything's a risk. And therefore, they can take their expertise and scale it. And therefore, that's the power of acquisition.
You make it sound like it's so easy sometimes, and I think like better than getting back to the granular of it, right? It's just, but sometimes it's important to think about it. It's important to think about the human side of things, and then this starts with a conversation, because sometimes these issues and these challenges when you're running a business and you're an entrepreneur can feel so big and so great and just seem impossible, and it comes down to, and it's something I talked about with Carrie on the last episode, it's you have to take what the business problem is and also put it down into like the most granular operational or human perspective of it, right? What is the deeper challenge going on? Like Tom always says, you add a zero to things, right? Make the ideas bigger. And I say you like when it comes to this and solving the problems, bring it back for a second, right? Bring it down to the most challenge, and that's usually the human brain, right? It's what's the motivation, what's the biggest problem, and how do you communicate that? And if you can take a step back from that and take a step back from the ego and the building and all of the things, and just being able to communicate, well, what do we want this to really look like? And what do you want this pain to feel like? Do you really want it to feel like this in 1, 3, 5, 7 years? That's how we can start getting to solving any of these problems, whether it be your partner dynamics or whether it be, thinking about taking a risk by acquiring a business, right? Really looking at, well, really, what is that risk? What is that biggest problem? And are we actually going to solve it?
So we're coming to the last few minutes here.
Okay.
If I'm watching this podcast right now, I'm asking the question, okay, great. I have a business idea and I'm signed up to this idea that maybe I could acquire my way in and be better than zero on day one. Where do I go looking for these opportunities, Tom? How do I go out and find the comparable to the business that I thought I wanted to start and go acquire?
Well, I'll start with this is that if you can, with everything, you're a novice, you haven't done this before, you find a community, you find sources to learn. With anything is, I'm good if you understand that you're starting a process from a learning perspective, but you be very careful that if you're buying someone's legacy and you're negotiating seller notes, so basically you're putting their business in your hands, then basically there's a responsibility. And I see too many entrepreneurs that are like, excuse the expression, children playing with chainsaws when they do acquisitions. So if you can put yourself in an environment where you're surrounded by or have experts that you can go to, that you can be giving guidance and advice, because acquisitions is a playbook. Same thing developing the pipeline of opportunities. Ayelet is the master of this. At Avo, we talked to over 2,000 companies and company owners and business owners that were interested in selling. It is a process, just like lead gen, in the way you just create your lead gen funnels between LinkedIn and email. If you want, you can also use other forms of social media. There's a process you do from just outreach and calls coming in. And what your goal is to have a lot of dialogues. I don't like broker-led deals, and I don't like some of the sites that are out there that are just listing sites. Why? When ever a listing is new or an investment maker starts representing a deal, the challenge is you're on the clock. You have a lot of competition coming in for a good deal that you should be looking at, and therefore you're more susceptible to commitment bias and desirability bias. And as entrepreneurs, we are so much victims of desirability and commitment bias that we started this, we're going to get over the finish line. The more deals you have in your pipeline, the lower the pressure is to doing that, to making sure that you do the right thing. And like everything, you want to be talking a lot of deals. Now, do I love talking with brokers about dead deals where the deals blew up along the way from the first buyer, so everyone has more realistic expectation? They did a lot of work. I love those deals. Same thing I love looking at deals that have been on the listing sites for 3, 6, 9, or 12 months, because there is more realistic expectation. Then I can come back with a deal that works for us, and I'm not under the gun, especially from a due diligence and relationship building process. So again, but there's a process to reach out, to look at the sites, to reach out to brokers and investment bankers. There's a process to what you should be doing on LinkedIn. There's a process for whether it's once a week or once a month, putting on your LinkedIn is, hi there, I'm looking to invest in or acquire this specific type of business in this specific niche. If you know with someone or you have a business, DM me, and you'll be shocked at the amount of outreach. So it's all about, I'm an industrial engineer, so take complex and make it simple and just make it a process.
I think a little nugget that's kind of buried in what you just said there is a deal doesn't necessarily need to be binary. Like, just because the opportunity was presented to you right now doesn't mean that you have to make the decision to do the deal right now if you don't feel like it's a good deal. In 6 months, the deal might be there, or in 3 weeks, you might find 5 comparables that are better deals for you to do. So I think a thing is, you might go out there and you might look at like Transworld, I think is one of the frequently noted sell side advisors out there. And you look at the business like the only bakery on Transworld. And so if it goes away, then I'll never find another. But the truth is there are thousands of bakeries you can buy tomorrow. The other thing is like one of my very close friends left Amazon and is currently consolidating all the collision repair shops north of Boston. And you know how he got his acquisitions? He just went out and started pounding the pavement, talking to every single business owner. What are you thinking about retirement? Have you thought about selling the business? One business at a time. Yeah, I won't say what number.
The same strategy as using LinkedIn, right? It's if you're dealing with like an online, right?
Yeah,
it's just going in person. It's the type of person.
Yeah, go find the businesses, talk to the CEOs. What are your thoughts about where you're taking the business, and kind of know the zip code of what you're looking for? Are you looking for a 10-person company, a 20-person company, a 100-person company? What is it you're trying to sign yourself up for? And go just talk to the owners directly. That's what Ayelet and I do every single day.
And for the fun of it, don't put the pressure on yourself. The other thing is just start having discussions. And the minute you start talking to owners, remember they're people. What are your goals? What are your long-term goals? What do you want to be doing 5-10 years from now? What about your kids? And a lot of times they're going to start sharing their goals with you. It's all about relationships. And that's how you identify what the real opportunities are with them and their business and whether you can find a great deal structures. But it all starts with people. And sometimes it starts with a conversation at a bar or a restaurant.
The boring way to start a conversation is, hey, do you want to do a deal? The way to start a really great deal conversation is like, tell me about why you started this in the first place. What do you love about it? How'd you get here? How'd you create such a great business? What does your family think? I love the thing, like, where do you want to be in 5 years? You spend 2 hours talking to them about how they got there and what their intrinsic motivations are. And they say, I really like what you're doing here. Maybe we could do something together. You think about it, give it time, but let it marinate.
I love that expression. There's maybe something we can do something together. And again, collaborate, do something together. The one thing before we go, just want to double click on that Ayelet said and brought up that I'd like to share with people is we get stuck in our own heads. So the exercise that I do is I add zeros onto idea. I said, okay, let me take whatever idea I do, whatever I'm planning, and let me add a zero, because there's no difference between when oh my God, my first business, I want to get to $1 million. My second business, I want to get to $10 million. My third business, I want to get to $100 million. These are just numbers. And what got stuck in my head each time was just my mental philosophy. And then once I add a zero to it, I would ask the question, love this question, what would have to be true to make this possible? And then, like you said, then you reverse engineer to look at the people and the process and the product assumptions that be true. And if you make it true, you can have it. And then add another zero on. Not that you should add 2 zeros onto your business, but it changes the way you think and the way you approach and creates opportunities, especially if you have a partner. It changes the dynamics of it, because the reality is you will sell your business at some point or you close it down. But if you sell it, whatever you're thinking about by adding a zero, that's what they're going to do your business. And that's what happened with our business, is that someone came in, offered us an offer for the business, told us what they were going to do, which is what we've been talking about for the last 3 years of doing. And I and my partner looked at each other and said, let's not sell it. Let's just do that. And the next 3 years were a blast. Add a zero.
Mic drop, right? Just leave it there. This was absolutely incredible. I think hearing both the stories and then the, mental engineering that goes behind it for how you orchestrate these deals to solve everything from partner challenges to product, people, P&L. It's incredible. Is there anything, before we say goodbye that, for people to be able to get involved with you or where to find you? Is there anything you want to leave us with?
I'm going to say, if you had an exit recently, you're looking to sell your business, and the primary, if you own a business if you're a business owner that does 7 to 9 figures and you either want to take your current acquisition playbook and raise the bar, or you want to do your first acquisition, go to DealConLive.com. Join us for our next DealCon event. For right now, we are running to a year. Our next one is February 7th through the 9th in Miami. The quality of the 150 people that are in the room are among the highest you're going to have from relationship. And it's ultimately about your network and the learning. We have lenders in the room. We have deals in the room. We have sellers in the room. We have that Rolodex of people and that community of people that you're going to want to be with. That is, if you had that fire in your belly to either mostly acquire, but then we're having about 20% of the room of sellers. Anyways, that's where I recommend. That's where you can find information, or go to tshipley.com and follow me. And I'm constantly putting out content on social media. And Ayelet and Kristen, you guys give me energy. Love the work you're doing. Love everything about you guys. And looking forward to seeing you in Miami.
Thanks for joining us and our guest, Tom Shipley, on this episode of the Inorganic Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please like, subscribe, share wherever you do. Until next time, Ayelet and I will see ya.